So you can send me a friend request if you didn't send it before. This is the link. Second, this is our educational group, Tricks of Chess. I'll also send you the link to this group. Here. Why it's important? So this is where I conduct tournaments, and pairings, for example, can be also seen here. Here, actually, there is a recording of the webinar, and this recording will be available for a few days. So if you missed it, you can find it here in this group. Also, I kindly recommend you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once I have more time, I'll definitely publish something interesting and helpful there. Okay, Anirudh, please check your sound. Looks like everything should be fine and everything should work. Okay. So what else? This is my website. You can find online courses there, and if you're interested, there is also my blog with also helpful information. For example, here, if you click here, you can subscribe for my 10 tips for self-studying chess. This is a free guide that you can get if only you subscribe here. I'll also send you the link here. I'm sure many of you already have it. And finally, yes, my YouTube channel, some of my webinars are also published here. So there is a playlist webinars where you can find them. If you're interested, you can go to this playlist and watch the webinars that I've conducted before. Okay, let me close it and let's get back to our games. Today we're going to start with the game played between Bobby Fischer and Samuel Reshevsky. Okay, let me just check who else do I have today. Tejas from India, Anu from India, Mark from France, Victoria from Poland. Who else? Alfred from St. Louis, Oliver from Indonesia. Fine. Okay, and okay, Tim even from Virginia. Okay, fine. Lil from New York. Sound was fine, but now you can't hear anything. Wait a sec, let me double check. Is the sound okay? Yes, the sound is good. Okay, so if you experience any technical problems, you can just re-log in. Or you can also find it, you can also find the stream on YouTube. I'll share the link, just a sec. So this is the link on YouTube. Okay, fine, let's start. So this game clearly illustrates how the center is important. Here, Bobby Fischer played with white pieces: e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, then g6. This is accelerated dragon. So knight c3, bishop to g7. Bishop e3 protecting it, knight f6, bishop c4, just a common practice to play this opening castle. And then if we, for example, castle, black can simplify by taking on e4. Knight takes e4 and then d5. Getting a piece back and simplifying the position. This is what we don't want. That's why here, instead of castling, we should play bishop b3. In this position, black has several moves. One of them is, for example, knight g4, which I don't recommend you playing with black pieces, but you should know what to do if you're white. Just take. They take on d4. You go back with the queen, they capture, and this position is in your favor. a7 is hanging. You can also play bishop d4 to trade the bishops, or knight d5. Instead of playing knight g4, the other logical move is a5, with the idea of playing a4, trying to distract the bishop or the knight. So, and then capture on a4. In such a case, don't worry, but castle. They play a4, you do this, they capture there, and you play knight b5. And here black realizes that they are in trouble. You're going to play bishop b6 and knight c7. Even if you don't do this, you control the dark squares on the queen side. The position should be much, much better. Okay, fine. Let's go back. So here, bishop b3. The best solution here is probably to play d6 or e6. d6 transpose just to an ordinary dragon, after which we can play f3, queen d2, and castle queenside, and then initiate a Yugoslav attack on the king side. So, but Samuel Reshevsky played knight a5. What's wrong with this move? The knight moves out of the center. I don't know what is Bobby Fischer's trap. Maybe this is the game. So what do you think? The knight moves out of the center, and how white may punish black in this position? What do you think? Okay, so I'm waiting for more suggestions. Fine. e5. Yeah, it's e5. So what then? What's the idea? Well, knight e8 that was played on the board loses immediately, and I'll show you how. So the best move for black was to capture on b3. Then e takes f6. If they take on f6, a takes b3, they are down a piece. But if they capture on a1, then f takes g7, the rook is under attack. Then maybe knight c2, queen c2, king takes g7. And in this position, white is winning. No, not winning, but much, much better because of two minor pieces that are stronger than rook and two pawns. Actually, maybe I'm mistaken here with better capture with the knight. And then if they take, we can play queen d4 or something like that. So knight e8 was played by Samuel Reshevsky, and then Bobby Fischer plays bishop f7. Okay, no, guys who watched this game before, please. Yeah, so thank you for the link. But so those who watched this game for the first time, what do you think should be played in this position? What's the idea? I mean, what if rook takes? What if king takes? If rook takes, knight e6 traps the queen. Exactly. If rook takes, knight e6 traps the queen. So you see, this knight took the square from the queen. And if d takes e6, then queen d8, it's winning. If king takes e6, then what do you think? If king takes, then okay, yes, guys, you're right. If king takes, then knight goes to e6. Again, if pawn takes, this is what exactly happened in the game. Then after queen d8, the game should be over, and it's time for black to resign. But what if the king takes? What do you think? How should we continue? Oh, yeah, the first move is queen d5. He goes to f5. Then what? e6. But e6, I believe bishop e5. Yes, here g4 is the best move. g4. They take, and this is how we join the rook to the attack. If now he goes to h3, it's just a checkmate like that. Queen g2, king h4, queen g4. If here he goes back to f5, we checkmate with rook g5 move. If he goes to h4, we play queen e4, king h5, queen g4 mate. And now the question for you, what if he goes to h5? How to checkmate quickly? e6. e6, rook f5, I believe. Queen g2, queen g2, queen f3 cannot be played. Queen f3, there is the rook on the f file. So guys, only queen d1. Queen d1, and then after king moves here, then queen g4 mate. Right, so here, if king takes on f7, it's a winning position. It's a checkmate in a few moves. Of course, Bobby Fischer calculated it. That's why after king f7, knight e6, Samuel Olszewski decided to capture with the pawn, and after queen d8, the game should be over. So knight c6, queen retreats, bishop e5. Let's calculate the material. What do we have as white? Queen for 2 minor pieces and 1 pawn. No, absolutely winning. And then later, Bobby Fischer successfully took the advantage and finally won the game. I don't think that we should pay attention and look at how Bobby Fischer finished the game, because the position is clearly winning. And this is how I wanted to illustrate that when one side gives up the central control, then you should immediately take the advantage of it. So knight a5, please look at this move. Black didn't do anything like d6 to control the center with something. They didn't play even e6 that could also allow them to control the center, and in such a case, this combination won't work because e6 blocks the bishop and blocks the pawn. So any of these moves should be played before the knight decides to leave the center and go to the edge of the board for a certain concrete idea. So knight a5 is a concrete move with the idea to take on b3, and it's not bad to locate the knight on the edge of the board in such a case if you have a concrete idea. But first, secure the center. Yeah, so technically knight a5 is a blunder. First, control the center, then do this. Okay, so there is a good question. Can we have this lecture on CD? I don't record it on CD, but you can at least find it here on this link. If you can't accept it, if you can't access it, you can just join my educational group, Tricks of Chess. So this is the link, and this is my club on chess.com. If you join it, you will get the access to this recording, so everyone can join. Okay, so let me close it. I hope it's clear, and if anybody plays it with you, you know what to do. Yeah, d6 is the best move. Instead of knight e5, d6 was the best option. Some people play e6, especially nowadays. Okay, so the second game we are going to analyze is also the game that I really enjoyed when I was watching it. I was watching it for a few times, maybe 4 or 5, and every time I find something new. This is the game between Bent Larsen and Boris Spassky. This is where Bent Larsen played his opening, named after him. No, it's Larsen opening, or I don't remember exactly, but there was a second chess player who also played it. So let's continue. What's happened? Yeah, Nims and Larsen, exactly. Thank you. b3, e5, of course. Bishop b2, knight c6. So black plays naturally. They moved the central pawn. Then the pawn was under attack, and instead of playing d6, blocking the bishop, black decided to defend this pawn with the minor piece, which is usually the best solution. c4. c4 is a normal move. They want to fight for the d5 square, so that makes sense. Knight f6. Knight f3. What can you say about knight f3? Yeah, knight f3 invites e4. That's right. So we are forcing white to play with the same piece twice, and we actually grab more space with this move. That's why this is a kind of inaccuracy. You see, again, by saying again, I mean what we saw in the previous game. This move provokes black to play something, but at the same time, the center is unsecured. They would better play this move, or at least knight c3 and then knight f3. So e4, the knight is chased, it goes to the center. And then again, instead of playing something slow, like maybe bishop e7, b6, h6, or what amateurs play, here we continue making the moves with tempers. Bishop c5 attacks on d4. Knight c6. We double the pawn, but it's actually in our favor. Now we release the bishop. Please look at this position and tell me who is developed better. So definitely black is developed better. Black has the center, 2 minor pieces, and also the light squared bishop is open. e3. e3 is okay move. What do you think we should do right now? Castle. Castle makes sense, of course, but it's not the best move. Here, you'd better think about what white gonna do next and think about how to disrupt this plan. If you play bishop g4 like you suggest, I believe they would play bishop e2. Or maybe actually queen c2, putting more pressure on e4. So I'm not sure if bishop g4 is good in this position. Bishop f5. Venley, could you please explain the idea of bishop f5? Yeah, exactly. White plays d3 on the next move. Not d3, but d4. If we, for example, castle, they would definitely play d4. And either we retreat with the bishop, they grab more space, or we take, then bishop d3, and he developed, he starts developing his pieces, which is good for him. So, but if only we play bishop f5, then d4 or d3 cannot be played, we'll capture it. So bishop e2 or knight c3 could be a normal move in this position, but white again spends the tempo on a useless move. Instead of developing minor pieces, he plays with the queen. So you know, playing with the queen too early can result into a tempo loss. And this is what we also can cover on our webinars. I will teach you how to take the advantage of early queen development. What do you think black should do? So castle makes sense. Anything else? Maybe queen d7, but queen e7 is played with the idea to castle. If, for example, d4 now, what do you think will happen? Yeah, bishop b4. I'm not sure if right now, maybe first we'd better take, then bishop b4, and then we try to put the pressure. Wait. Can we play better? I was thinking about bishop e3 sacrifice. No, not here. So, and then if knight d2, we definitely win. For example, we take and then play rook d8. Not castle because of queen f5 check, but rook d8, and after he blocks, just c5 wins the game. So the only logical response is knight c3, but in such a case, I believe we can play knight e4 and put more pressure on c3. Yeah, that makes sense. So queen e7 with the idea to castle queenside. Bishop e2. Castle. And another move that I think is a mistake. Okay, there is a good question. When it's time to castle? Usually I castle before move number 15. But for beginners, I kind of recommend castling before move number 10. And actually, first, let me just talk about basic principles of playing the opening stage of the game. So first, you occupy the center with 1 or 2 pawns. With 1 pawn, of course, but if they allow you to get 2 pawns to the center, this is what you should definitely do. Then you develop minor pieces and castle. You can develop, for example, bishop and king and knight from one side and then castle. Or you can develop maybe 2 knights, bishop, and then castle, or all your minor pieces and then castle. It depends on the concrete position, of course, and the opening that you play. So that's why, let's say, 1 pawn move, 2nd pawn move, 4 minor pieces. These are 6 moves. Then castle, 7. Sometimes you also trade pawns, and maybe you can devote a few moves to that. So you have 3 moves to do something before castling. Okay, there is another good question. When it's time to castle to the queen side, when to the king side? Uh, it depends on your future plan. When you castle, you always think about your plan. If, for example, you think that you can quickly advance the pawns and attack the enemy king, for example, on the king side, it makes sense to castle to the queen side. But at the same time, you should understand that your king on the queen side also will be the object of the attack. And this guy, I mean, your opponent will likely to advance the pawns and try to weaken it. So if you are prepared for that, then I would suggest you playing opposite castling positions. But if you like to play more positional playing, then you'd better castle king side. But even there, you can meet sharp positions. So it depends on which side you want to play. How to define actually that? You can, for example, check how far your pawns are advanced on the queen side, and if they are far advanced, then maybe it's time to play there. You can push them and create maybe a distant pass pawn, or create weaknesses into the enemy camp and then attack them. If you have a material advantage on the king side, you can start the king side attack. But before doing these plans, you should always think about the center. If you start the king side attack, the center should be stable. And it's better to play it with a closed center, but at least it should be stable. Okay, fine. I hope I answered the question. So f4 was played in this position. The idea is that en passant is impossible. This is how white wanted to secure the king side with such a move, but actually it didn't work. Knight g4, with the idea of queen h4 and then queen h3 after g3. So what happened? g3 immediately. And guys, I'm sure you know how to react in such a case. What do we usually do? Yes, exactly. h4, h5. Okay, Jarek asks if there is a chance that even if you don't castle at all, you still win. Of course there is. So h5. So with the idea to open the h file and join the last piece to the attack. So you can ask me why they not taking this pawn. Come on, guys, who cares? This is a useless pawn. For example, we can play rook h7, bishop retreats back. Sorry, I don't believe this is a good move. Bishop retreats back, h4, and then we ruin their king side position. So h5, h3 was played on the board with the idea to chase the knight. Probably Bent Larsen expected the knight to retreat to f6, and then he thought it's still okay and he could continue with knight c3 and so on. But no. What do you think black may continue? Yes, guys, you are absolutely right. We can push h4. So if they take, then queen joins the attack. The only thing they can do is to take on g4. They can do it with the bishop or with the knight. If they take with the bishop, it's almost the same thing. H takes g3, then rook g1 and rook h2, with the idea of these and these after that. And if king f1, rook f2. And of course, you should understand that after this move, it's just a pin and the game is over. So that's why they take with the pawn, h takes g3. Sorry, h takes g3. White just wants to keep more pieces defending the king. If rook h8, bishop f1, the position is absolutely losing because of what? Rook h1? Yeah, rook h1. Then g2. That's why here they play rook g1. And now the question for you. How to continue? What do you think Boris Spassky played? So what suggestions do we have? Queen h4, g2, queen h4, rook h1. So queen h4, yeah, is a possible move, but what can be played then? Definitely, rook g2 can be played, and if queen h1, bishop f1. So it's not a good idea. G2 right now, and if they take, you check, but bishop f1. So I'm not sure if it's a winning position. Maybe, but it takes time. So rook h1, sacrificing the rook. So we just sacrifice the knight, and here Boris Spassky decides to sacrifice even the rook. Can you imagine it? Actually, this tactics is not so complicated. They have to take. Something like king f1 is a blunder because rook takes rook and queen h4 with a future attack. So they take g2. Rook g1 in this position is another blunder, but this move wasn't played on the board. Queen h4. He goes there and just queen h1 or queen h2. The game is over. There is nothing he can do to protect the rook. He can play maybe this move, but then we promote. They take, we take, and this is a checkmate. That's why rook f1. He sacrifices the rook. What do you think? What do you think how to continue? Yes, in this game, Boris Spassky plays almost like Mikhail Tal. Actually, I believe Spassky was a better player than Tal. Tal was a good tactical player with good intuition, but he blundered a lot. I would say Spassky is more stable player. Well, queen h4, that's right. We play queen h4. Then if he blocks with the rook, we promote. He goes to d1. And then we just take, gain a rook back. And no, actually, this is where white resigned. Why? No, look at this position. His pieces are not participating in the game. And black absolutely dominates in the center, even just with a few pieces. So bishop f1, then bishop g4. If bishop e2, then this is a checkmate. If king c1 in this position, then queen e1 leads to a checkmate. And that's it. So the game is over. Okay, so I want you to look at this position. Black is developed better. Black controlled the center, while white was doing some weird moves like b3, bishop b2. He wasn't fighting for the center. He played with the queen. He played f4, and spent several tempers on the g knight moves. Knight f3, knight d4, knight takes c6, and so on, while black only played helpful moves. So you see here the domination in the center allowed black to succeed with his kingside attack. And because of that, and also because of undeveloped pieces on the queen side, black was able to succeed in this attack with knight and rook sacrifice. G2 and queen h4. Sure, I can show you. So rook g1, you mean in this position, g2, rook takes g2, queen h4. No. G2, no, he won't take. He would play something else. Maybe he will. Wait. He will. Queen h4, king, no, rook f1, goes there, bishop f1. And this is how they try to defend the position. You take here, maybe knight c3. So okay, so another question. When I mean controls the center, so what you should remember. These 4 squares are the center. If we add these 4 all together, that will be extended center. So here, black controls the center. They have the pawn on e4. They control the d5 square with the other pawn. The bishop controls d4 and prevents white from playing d3 or d4. The only square that we don't control is e5, but nobody cares about it because here the possession of the e5 square doesn't allow white to do anything. They don't have pieces. If they would have the knight there, then maybe they could avoid such a strong attack and lose the game later in a positional way. But here their knight is on b1. Okay, and now the last game that I would like to show you today. This is quite a modern game between Arkady Nadich and Christian Bauer, where white played a kind of I can't say a mistake. They played the opening that at least allows them to keep the position equal. But they were outplayed because black controlled the center and moved their pieces effectively. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So knight f3 was played by Arkady Nadich, d5, c4, d4, and then e3. How would you play in this position? So you suggest c5. I don't like c5 move. I'll show you why. This move is definitely possible, but I don't like it. e5, knight e5. Okay, here Arnaud suggests to play knight c6. This and John also agrees with him. So knight c6 is a possible move. This move was played in the game. As for c5, I don't like it because of b4. Okay. By the way, guys, do you know how to play against knight f3 move? There are several strategies that can be played there. So, for example, after c4, I'm always playing for a victory. I play d4. And here, there is a b4 move with the idea to grab more space on the queen side and play bishop b2 and attack on d4. And in this position, I recommend you playing g5. Looks like a weird move, but actually works. The idea is that if they take, this is how we double attack. If knight goes to f3, we push e4, and the knight has to go back. We absolutely dominate in the center. Well, of course, they don't take immediately. They first play this move, we play that. Sometimes they play queen a4, which doesn't really change the position much, but is a little bit stronger than taking on g5 immediately. And here, after e5, black has more than a full compensation for the pawn. And actually, this line is quite modern, and that's why it's not so often when white decides to play b4 in this position because of g5. Okay, here e3, but e3 allows c5 here isn't good because of b4. As I said, they try to undermine, but knight c6 looks good. If they take, we take with the knight, and this is how we dominate in the center with our pieces. Not pawns, but pieces. I mean, minor and major pieces. So you may ask me, and what if they play b4 in this position? If they play b4 in this position, we can capture on a3 first. They capture with the f pawn, and we take on b4. So we gained the pawn. They play this. What do you think we can do as black? c5, e5, developing bishop, bishop f5. Bishop f5, I'm not so sure about this move, at least because of queen a4. Yeah, so bishop f5, queen a4, knight retreats, d5, the knight is lost, if I'm not missing anything. So bishop f5 is a blunder, c5 maybe, c5, bishop b2 then, or maybe anything else. E5 is the best move. Why? Good question, but let me show. So if queen a4, now we can block with bishop d7 and gain a tempo. So if pawn takes, then we play bishop f5, or maybe we can take on d1, then play bishop f5. So queen takes queen, rook takes, then for example he tries to play this move to secure the c2 square, or maybe he tries to play this move, after which we can actually consider taking on d4 or just playing knight h6. Well, let's say knight e3 because they want to develop pieces. Then bishop c5 and knight h6, knight g4, or knight e7, knight g6. So with equal number of pawns, we definitely dominate with our pieces positions, and we are better. However, there is a good question. Why do they have to take on the e5 pawn and double the pawns? Why not to take with the knight? Right. So we sacrifice the pawn back. I just want you to understand that the number of pawns is equal now. And queen h4 check. And they have to move with the king. This is how white loses their castling privilege. If g3 is played, then after queen e4, we double attack with queen h1 and knight c2. And this is where black gets the advantage. All these is covered in my course, Beating Knight f3. Oh, here it's written with National Master, but I'm FIDE Master now. So here, this is a 9.5 hour course where I explain how to play against Knight f3. I cover all popular lines here. So this is the link, and if you want to enroll, the price is $99, but actually, again, if you use my coupon code, which is Viktor60, you can get 60% discount. Okay. And actually, if you are interested in any other courses here, I'll just send you the link. So there are a lot of them. And my coupon code, Viktor60, can be applied to any of these courses, or even to any courses on this website. Okay, fine. Let's continue. Just a minute for self-promotion. No, unfortunately, Viktor 100 doesn't work. Only 60 is the maximum. I'm not the owner of this website, so I just asked him for a discount for my students, and this is what he told me. He can only give a 60% discount for my students. Okay, fine. Let's continue. So all this is covered, including the line that was played in the game. Knight c6. e takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen d4, knight c3. Here, white intends to attack the queen, so they probably want to do this and then play d4, dominate in the center with two central pawns. They are developed better. Black only moved the queen and is about to move it back after bishop e3 attack, but actually black controls the center, and this is the key factor. So even if you control the center but you are not developed, it's still okay. The center sometimes is more important than development, and this is the case. So here the idea is that the d4 will be a strong point for black pieces, while the d3 or d2 pawn will be a backward pawn and the object of the attack. And this is what exactly happened in the game, and because of that, black outplayed white. Okay, let's continue. c6 to restrict knight's activity. d3, knight h6. What a weird move. White to the edge of the board. Good question. Of course, knight goes to f5 with the idea to secure these two squares, e3 and d4. Taking on h6 is not a good idea. G takes h6, then bishop goes to g7, and black dominates the center, controlling the dark squares, for example. Rook g8 can be even played first. f5, then bishop g7 and castle queenside, putting extra pressure on d3. If bishop e3 in this position, then queen retreats, d4, looks like white is fine. They push the pawn, they don't have a backward pawn. Knight f5. So yes, this knight on the edge of the board is not so bad. I told you that when we had the webinar devoted to this topic, I told you that it's possible to locate your knights on the edge of the board for a certain concrete idea. Knight f5, and then, for example, knight takes e3 can be played anytime we want it. Then h4, they want to attack us on the king side. We can play c5, they take queen a5, and later we capture on e3 and c3, ruin the pawn structure, and then it's just a technically winning position. For example, these and these moves. Okay, let's go back. So knight h6, h3 was played, because now when knight is on f5, it can be under the attack of the g pawn. I think that wasn't the best strategy. So queen e5 check to vacate the d4 square for the knight, of course. Knight e4, knight d4, f4, queen a5, bishop d2, queen d8. So what do we have? What did black do? Black occupied the center with the knight and played c6 only. What did white do? White played with 5 pawns, get the knight to the center, which is probably good, and played with the bishop to d2, which is also okay. But black is better. Could you please guess what is the evaluation of this position? What do you think the engine thinks? Can you please measure the advantage of black? No, +1, you mean -1. Yeah, -1, I understand. What else? -0.5, -1. Of course, it depends on the engine, but yeah, so it looks like white is developed, but the center is better, and white already create weaknesses into their camp. So here, f4, d3, these all are weaknesses, and maybe this is how black can exploit it in future. So, but the computer says that it's minus 0.8, so not -3, sorry, 0.8. This is the stockfish. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Black pawn structure is better, and the main problem is that Black has a strong point. Wait a sec. Why I can't do this? Black has a strong point on d4, and the d3 pawn is a backward pawn and a weakness. That's the problem. Oh, bishop g2, g6, bishop c3, bishop g7. They cancelled. Maybe they could play something better, maybe queen d2 and so on. But we play h5 here. What's the idea of this move? The idea is to prevent f5 move. So here, while we are not castled, playing f5 is too risky. We open the file and then try to checkmate on h2 with our queen c7 move, for example. This is really dangerous. And to avoid it, to avoid the h file being opened, White has to close the position g5. And now they don't have any counterplay with f4, f5. That's the reason. And now White has a strategically losing position. Black can just reinforce their position, attack the weaknesses. And because of this knight standing in the center, there will be no activity for White. Queen d2, bishop f5, rook a2 e1, queen c7, and g3 attacking, then bishop. Okay, there is no good spot for the bishop. You may take it. Rook a d8, putting the pressure on d3. No, here king h2 was played. I still believe that that was a better option. Then maybe bishop g7, king g7. But if they play queen c3, we can still put either our knight or rook on d4. I think the knight. King h2, too slow for this position. h4, chasing the knight. Again, the best option is to take on f5, but he didn't. He played there. We play knight e6, removing the knight, but putting the pressure on f4, and with the idea to put the pressure on d3 with our rooks. King h1. Why? Well, actually, the pawn on g5 was hanging. We wanted to do these and these moves, taking the advantage of the pin. So he has to play with the king to h1. Now I want you to think about Black's plan and suggest anything. b5. I don't understand the idea, but okay. Double rooks on the d file. Attack the central pawn. But how to attack the central pawn? Yes, I understand that you meant d3, but how? Yeah, the best idea is actually to double the rooks on the d file. Or if speaking about b5 move, I don't know actually. So what's the idea? No, if they take, then I think you are okay with it. I mean, White is okay with it. So, but I think c6 can be a weakness. So actually there is no threat. Bishop a5. So you just lose the exchange. No, you can't play b5. So that's why rook d7. Yes, Michael. So trading pieces, especially minor pieces, is a good idea. Bishop g7, king g7, rook d1, rook f d8. Now d3 is hanging. And White decided to give up it, but to capture on h4. They played queen f2. If they play queen e3 to protect both pawns simultaneously, then what do you think we could do? Okay, I'm waiting for your suggestions. Knight d4 back. What's the idea? Bishop takes e4. What for? Queen b6 looks good, but after queen e2. Queen takes f4 is a blunder. 5. Oh, okay. So we can actually triple a rook d4. Then, for example, I don't know, b3, queen d7. And then if they play knight f2, the f4 pawn is hanging. Is there anything else that they can play? I don't think so. A rook f3. No, this is a blunder. Because of this move. So queen e3 actually doesn't work. Queen f2 didn't work as well. Rook d3, rook takes d3, rook takes d3, queen goes there. Rook d4, putting the pressure on the knight. The knight retreats, but rook f4 and white resigned. Why? Because black is about to trade all pieces and pass the game into the endgame with an extra pawn. And this position is technically winning, even if you are just a 1900 player and not a strong grandmaster like, for example, Christian Bauer. What may happen then? For example, they could capture on f5 with a check. G takes f5, queen h6, king g8. They take they push with the idea to deliver a few checks. Then we take on f1 and take on g6, queen g6, knight g7. So still one pawn up. And looks like there is no continuation for their attack. If, for example, let's say they play c5 to join the bishop to c4, then queen f4 is enough. We are about to take on c5. We also prevent bishop c4 move, attack the bishop. Should be winning. Yeah, that was queen h6 line. So what else can be done? Queen h6 right now leads to the same position. Taken here, and then queen takes, of course. Queen takes. So what then? Queen takes on f4. Knight takes f4, knight takes f5, g takes f5. This position is losing as well. Why? Because here two pawns, the f and e, are passed pawn, and g5 is a weakness, h3 might be a weakness. So what to play? If knight takes g2, it's completely winning position. So let's say bishop f1. What should I do? This move. The pawn is hanging. h4, king h5. The pawn is lost and g5 is lost. So there is nothing to talk about. Any suggestions of what to play for white in this position to be able to save? Looks like nothing works. Okay, let's move it back to the moment when d4 was occupied with the queen, to this position where I told you that the evaluation is minus 0.8. So here the control over the center, such a square like d4 with the piece, is the most important factor. This is how I usually like to play. And I also prefer the pawn protecting this knight. But in this position, you can do like that, but you have a bishop that can support on d4. And this is how you dominate. So what can you learn from this game? You should think about the center instead of, no, I can't say like that. If I say that you should control the center instead of develop your pieces, then you will be playing some weird moves and won't develop pieces, and you will likely to lose the game. So sometimes the central control is more important than pieces development. And if you see that after you occupy a certain square, you can successfully finish your development, then your strategy might be good. And this is how you may take the advantage. Sometimes I even try to save a tempo on castling. I develop all my pieces and then leave my king with the ability to castle on the next move. And then I'm just looking at something that is more helpful than castling at this exact moment. If I find nothing helpful, then I castle. So, but for you, I recommend you castling before move number 10, because you may blunder something. So when I'm doing it, I'm always at every move, I try to calculate what my opponent gonna do and if it's dangerous for my king or not. I'm not sure if you can do the same thing, but if you can at least try, and if you think it works, then you can also save tempers on castling and castle later when you think that this is the best moment. But here we are talking about the central control. So you see the center can be controlled not only with pawns, but with pawns it's preferred, but also with the pieces, especially if this square was weakened with such moves like c4. For example, if the pawn was on c2, then we couldn't occupy it because just c3 chasing the knight, knight goes back. And that's it. Okay, so 3 games that I wanted to show you today. Do you have any suggestions of what to cover on my next webinar? If yes, you can email me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just a sec, I'll send you the link once again. If you're interested in private coaching, you can also email me. We can discuss it. Yeah, actually today, no, we decided not to finish the analysis of the game that Bobby Fischer played. It wasn't so interesting. It was just a technique of how to convert extra material. So that's why today we finished earlier. Okay, so thank you. And please join the next webinar on next Sunday. Maybe it will be a simul. So anyway, thank you for coming. You can bring your friends to my next webinars. See you.